So I'm Matt, and we're here in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and we're going to take a few minutes today to sort of talk about basic trips and sort of how we kit the vehicle. And we're going to start off with things that we want to have at hand, and that's sort of how we break things up a little bit, or break things out a little bit, is type of trip and then where it's at in the vehicle. So let's take a look. So one of the first things we take a look at when I'm sitting in the vehicle and I think about is at hand. So what do I want within reach of the driver? And I sort of break things up into, sort of safety, comfort, things like that, in things that I want. And then I look at, obviously, further away from the driver, and we're going to talk about that in other episodes. But one of the places I start is I start with my visor, right? So in my visor, I typically have a pen, a light, again, safety piece. There's always a little bit of cash in my visor. The number of times I've run into tolls or something where I wasn't thinking I needed cash and had run out or whatever. Having cash in my visor has saved me a crap load of time. So when I think about safety, that's one of the first things I think about, is having a little bit of money in my visor, stuff like that. And when we think about basic trips, we're not really, sort of an entry-level trip or a low-stress trip, let's call it. We're not needing a bunch of gear, right? And we don't need a bunch of navigation stuff. I always carry maps, so I've always got gazetteers, at least for the area I'm going into, typically between the seat here, so I can pull them out and look at them if I get lost. Other than that, like I said, on sort of a basic trip, I can use my phone. I don't need much else. I'm assuming that trip is going to be within rescue distance, right? So within rescue range, a tow truck can get to me, so I'm not worried about a bunch of other stuff. Just a nice, relaxed time. So basically, once we leave the visor area and kind of center console, now I do keep some stuff in the center console. I usually keep like a video camera. This goes back to comfort and kind of entertainment stuff for me. I usually carry just a small med stuff. So normally in here I've got Rolaids and ibuprofen and Band-Aids, just sort of a general boo-boo kit that will either be in here or it'll be in my headrest on my first aid kit, depending on the vehicle. This also has some hot hands in it and stuff like that. Again, comfort, sort of stress, stuff that I don't want to have to worry about. So from there, we're going to take a look at what I keep on the seat and kind of within arm's reach. Okay, so from there, we kind of use the back of the seat platform for a lot of stuff. But the reality is, again, things that I want at hand and I'm going to take typically on a basic trip, it's not really that much stuff. I'm typically going to have a first aid kit, and I think people get really overwhelmed with needing stuff to go places and do things, and I don't think that's the case. I think you can do a lot of stuff and you don't have to have much gear. So I do keep a first aid kit. I keep it at hand. Headrest panel is usually an easy place to keep it. Velcro to the floor if your Velcro works. There's a lot of places you can keep a first aid kit, but keeping one that's easy to get to, that you can peel off and walk away with if you need it, close at hand to the driver, because I want to be able to, if I'm in an accident, I want to be able to reach it. Next, I'm going to go to typically things like, I like having some kind of binocular or monocular with me so that I can reach up and grab it and look at stuff as I'm kind of tunneling through the woods and seeing what's over there. And it's something I really started carrying a few years ago and using just a lot. I actually have a bigger set of binoculars I usually take with me. This just happens to be in here. The next thing as we go down the truck, you're looking at things like fire extinguisher. I usually keep that really low at the bottom so that it actually kind of rests on the floor of the truck and just kind of keeps itself upright. But something that I can easily remove without thought from where I'm sitting, and I can pull it out of here. So I can get my fire extinguisher out of here without a fight. I want it, again, arm's reach. I also, in almost every vehicle you'll find a can of bear spray that is typically pretty much at arm's reach. Lots of good uses for bear spray. We don't have to get into them, but I absolutely keep a can of bear spray at almost every door in every vehicle I have. I typically keep a knife pretty close at hand, just in case I need to cut something, whatever. I mean, it's just a handy thing to have. Honestly, you should have a seatbelt cutter probably on your keychain someplace. Again, something weird happens, you flop a vehicle, something like that. You want to have something like that is handy. I also typically have a couple radios close at hand so I can hand them to somebody if they go out. If we were in a recovery situation, or I wanted to, we're going to take a look at something, I want to be able to have some kind of communication between the other people in the vehicle, even if it's not my main radio. Vehicle obviously has a radio in it. But again, for a basic trip, there's no real reason. You can run 2 handhelds, and a cell phone will get you through just about anything you need. First aid kit. And then the other thing I typically have with me is a trash bag. Because just keeping the mess out of the vehicle is handy. So I'll have a trash bag I can flip to the front if I don't have anybody in the front seat. I can leave it in the back. It'll kind of cover the stuff, things like that. But when you look at like gear at hand, that's kind of what I look at. It's safety. So I've got first aid kit. I've got a little bit of cash. I've got a flashlight. And this is basic, right? Basic. I'm not going into deep water. I'm not looking at multiple days off grid, nothing like that. But I'm going to go out, have a decent time, spend the weekend camping, that sort of thing. Fire extinguisher, I just always want to have it. Bear spray just in case you need it. I keep, again, a couple radios, a knife. The other thing that I keep here too, down here, and I think everybody should have these no matter what, in all vehicles, because there's multiple uses, right? Is a road flare. And don't get the little baby road flares, get real full-size road flares. So there's a couple things that I think are handy about road flares. One, you have a crisis in the vehicle, bam, put a road flare out, right? Makes sense. You need to start a fire, crack a road flare, because there's hardly any piece of wood that a road flare will not light. I mean, they will just get fires going. So you're in a crisis, it's ugly, bam, road flare. You end up in an altercation or something goes wrong. Crack a road flare and start chasing somebody around. Most of the time they'll run. A lot of smoke and flames scares people. If you point the road flare out, it's not burning you. It's just one of those handy things you can have. A little bit of self-defense, a little bit of safety, and a little bit of survival, all in one cute little tubular package that can ride at the bottom of your seat. Normally I have 3 or 4 in here, because I think road flares are handy things to have for lots of stuff. Like I said, same thing. I keep bear spray pretty close at hand, things like that. Maps, navigation, phone covers a lot of my other stuff. And that's, like I said, that's really it. That's all the excitement I take on a fairly simple trip. Now, again, as we get into more trips, we have a lot more gear in here probably that we'll talk about. But as far as what I would actually care about, that's kind of all I would care about. Safety, navigation, kind of first aid, a little bit of gear, and like disappear with my tent and my sleeping bag. Wish it well. So in the next video, we're going to take a look at the next part of a level 1 trip, and that's going to be gear that I want to have but doesn't have to be within arm's reach. And gear I want easily accessible, but I don't need within reach of the driver. And again, sort of basic trip, not a long way off the grid, not a bunch of stuff like that. I'm going to be rescue accessible, meaning that a tow truck can come save me if something goes wrong. We'll see you in the next one in part 2.